The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
All these voices.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How's everybody tonight?
Tonight's episode is going to be fun. This is one that we've kind of touched on before, but we haven't really got real deep into it. And I came across this really interesting article about the Men in Black, and that's what the show is going to be about tonight. So tonight's article comes from alienhistory.net, and the headline is Men in Black Really Exist. A scary U.S. Air Force memo suggests. It was published February 24th, 2022. UFO seekers have had to deal with the enigmatic Men in Black throughout the years. According to John Keel, Men in Black are persons who act as military commanders with the intent of suppressing the UFO mystery inquiry, reducing the credibility of those participating in such investigations, and instilling terror in the witnesses. A previous U.S. Air Force report corroborates this, stating that the branch and the Blue Book Project were aware of these black guys and had recorded multiple occasions in which they intimidated UFO witnesses and seized photographic evidence. Quote, "I've seen the guys in black and they absolutely exist, but not in the context of UFOs. You encounter these folks if you are one of the unlucky ones working on a SAP. I'm not sure why they dress in all black and have such a commanding presence, but they do. They don't only deal with UFOs, they deal with black projects in general. It all sounds a little over the top and somewhat comical to me, but these men are dead serious, and I'm quite sure they have carte blanche to do whatever they want." End quote. They're also in Canada. Their attributes are out of this planet. Simply ignore them like a nightmare. Did I or didn't? And then there's a video about the Men in Black that's attached to the article, and that is the end of the article. Now, I want to actually read the section of this Air Force memo that they're talking about. They don't actually read it in the article, but I have the memo here, so let me pull that up. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to try to put this actually on the screen for you, so when you're watching it on YouTube, you can see it yourself. The point of this memo that I'm going to read starts here. It says, "Our extensive, in-depth research into these matters indicates that a large, well-equipped, and well-financed organization has been carrying out a carefully planned program of harassment and interference for at least 20 years. The only apparent purpose of this program are to suppress investigation into the UFO mystery, discredit the individuals who are involved in such investigations, instill fear and confusion in witnesses to UFO activity, and to create false speculations about governmental involvement." And that is the end of the portion of the memo in which I'm going to read. And this is coming from a declassified memo from the United States Air Force. So the first thing I want to talk about with the Men in Black is, in the article they say that it's not limited to only UFO cases, that it is also tied to a lot of the Black Book projects that are kind of things that the government are doing under the radar that are classified that nobody knows about. And that is true. Also, we have evidence of the Men in Black appearing on different paranormal cases as well. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about when you and your buddies go down to Moundsville or Pennhurst or whatever and do an investigation. But we covered on multiple episodes of Staring into the Abyss the black-eyed children and the black-eyed adult phenomenons. And in those cases, there were several witnesses who reported seeing the Men in Black show up and actually pick up the black-eyed children and take them away. So somehow they are involved with the black-eyed children as well. Now, as far as the black-eyed children go, there's multiple theories on what that could possibly be. Some people say that they're alien. Some people say that they are some sort of genetic experiment done by the government. And that would make sense. Either one of those would make sense why the Men in Black would be involved. But they also are involved in unexplained paranormal phenomena of all types. And I think that the black-eyed children would definitely fall under that category of unexplained paranormal phenomenon, because we don't exactly know what the hell they are. So, do the Men in Black actually exist? Yes, absolutely they do exist. There are multiple different organizations, let's say, in the government who kind of do that function. In the Air Force, you have the Paranormal Investigations Unit. I was actually going to be a part of that at one time when I went down to MEPS to join up with the Air Force. I had to do 2 years in Air Force intelligence and then 2 years in the NSA, and then I would be transferring over to the Paranormal Investigations Unit. So it is a real unit that is attached to our military that investigates paranormal phenomena. So that does actually exist. I can 100% say that is a thing because I was almost in it. I don't think that is actually the Men in Black, though. I think that the Men in Black are much deeper than that. I think that they are many levels of classification higher than what the Paranormal Investigations Unit would be. I think that unit is primarily involved in the study and the research of different UFO and UAP phenomenon and stuff like that was primarily what I think they do. They also handle other paranormal cases as well, like other things that come up that don't have normal or scientific explanations to go and look and see what the hell's going on. You see some of those things like down in New Mexico and places like that where they have these different areas where strange things happen, where radios don't work, and different magnetic anomalies are there and stuff like that. They'll go in and check those kind of things out. But I think the Men in Black, like I said, are much deeper than that. I think they handle the most classified stuff. I'm talking about like the Q level classification, where it's the highest, and the only way that you can even know that is if you have the proper clearance and you have the need to know. So you have to be actually read into the program to have a need to know what it is and have the proper clearance in order to even know about it. Those people I don't think actually exist, and I don't mean that they're not real. They are real, they're there, but what I mean by they don't exist is they don't exist on paper. They no longer are on the record, if that makes sense. They don't have social security numbers, they don't have names, they don't have birth certificates. They have been erased from the system. So they operate outside of the system, if they're even normal people. There's a theory out there that I don't know if I buy it, but that the Men in Black are not human, that they are actually aliens of some sort. This is fueled by some photographs and some video of the Men in Black where they appear to look like they aren't human. They have slightly elongated heads and they have weird looking eyes that don't look human at all. Now, I don't know if these photographs and these videos are doctored. I don't know if if it's a simple matter of a distortion in the film that is causing that anomaly, or if it is something that is a real thing. I haven't really looked into it that deeply and studied it to tell you. But that is one theory out there, that the Men in Black are not of this world, that they are actually alien, and that they're working with the government. Like I said, I don't buy that so much, because they're involved in a lot more than just extraterrestrial effects. I might tend to believe a little bit more that that could be a possibility if the only thing they did was cover up UFO sightings and stuff. But like I said, they're involved with the black-eyed children. They're involved with all kinds of different paranormal phenomena. So in my mind, why would aliens want to be part of our government that comes in and covers up anything that doesn't appear normal? To me, that doesn't make any sense. So I don't think that they're alien. I think that they're humans who have worked their way through the different intelligence agencies, and now they are working for an off the books agency that nobody knows about, or at least the general public doesn't know about, that covers up a lot of stuff that the government's doing that they don't want us to know about. I think that's what the Men in Black are. I think that their primary purpose is to ensure that the things that aren't supposed to get out to the public don't get out to the public. One definite clue of that is in the article they talk about instilling fear and intimidation in people that are doing the investigations so that they don't report what they find. In the Roswell incident in the 40s, there were reports that the Men in Black showed up there and were actually intimidating witnesses and stuff after that. You had the Men in Black show up in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, after the bridge collapse with the whole Mothman phenomenon that happened there. The Men in Black showed up after that, and they were intimidating witnesses and making people change their stories and stuff of what they saw. You have them show up in a lot of different things like that. Now, that raises a very important and very serious question. That question is, if the Men in Black work for the government, which it's pretty obvious that they do, why the hell are they showing up after a bridge collapse and intimidating witnesses that are claiming that they witnessed the Mothman there? Why are they showing up at all these different things and intimidating people that aren't connected to anything the government is doing? Does that make sense? Why? Okay, so we know that the government is doing a lot of stuff. One, that they're not supposed to be doing, and two, that a lot of people don't know about. That ranges everything from secret aircraft that they're working on that are classified, all the way to genetic manipulation experiments, bioweapons, all kinds of stuff like that, that are kind of off-book projects that nobody talks about on the record, that aren't supposed to exist, but do exist. We found that out through all kinds of different declassifications of documentation from the CIA about the human-animal chimeras that were being created by CIA experiments, where they were mixing the genes of different animals with the genes of humans to try to create creatures. So what if, let's take Mothman for example, what if the Mothman is not some supernatural creature that appears before catastrophe strikes? What if it is something that was actually created in a lab that has escaped, and that's why they're out trying to get it and trying to intimidate witnesses not to talk about it? What if the bridge collapse was caused by the Mothman, or by the government trying to capture the Mothman? and these men in black showed up and intimidated people into telling a story they wanted told to cover it up. It's possible. I mean, our history is chock full of stuff like this. Gulf of Tonkin, Operation Mockingbird. I could go on and on and on. I'm not going to say too many of them because all of those are going to be trigger words that are going to get me in trouble on YouTube. But history is full of these events that have happened that haven't actually happened the way that we think they've happened. So that's a possibility, and that kind of got my brain thinking. When you have these guys show up at things that have no real connection to the government, it makes no sense. Why are they there? I can understand if the government's trying to keep you from thinking that aliens exist, so they're going to show up at a UFO sighting or something like that, or a crash like at Roswell. That makes sense. But why would they show up at a bridge collapse in West Virginia? The Mothman also was sighted in Chicago, and up in Canada and a couple other places it was sighted. And every place this thing goes, you have these guys show up later, after it's been there, intimidating people and making people change their statements. Why is that? Why are the men in black following behind the black-eyed children and collecting them and taking them away in cars? What are the black-eyed children? Is it possible that the black-eyed children might also be some sort of genetic experiment gone wrong, or maybe gone right? Maybe they got exactly what they wanted when they made them, but somehow they got out, and so they come and they round them up and take them back. Or what if it's even more sinister than that? What if they didn't get out at all? What if they didn't escape at all? What if the black-eyed children were actually released purposely into the population to find out what they could do, and to find out the extent of the abilities that they possess that they've been trying to get them to do? We know through CIA declassified documents once again about remote viewers. We know about all kinds of psychic experiments that the CIA was involved in, trying to produce psychics that could see what the enemy was doing and tell them about troop movements, tell them about weapons and all kinds of stuff that the enemy possessed. We know they were doing all kinds of stuff like that. So what if the black-eyed children is like the next generation of those experiments? I mean, the experiments we're talking about took place in the 50s, 60s, and 70s that we have declassified documents that tell us about it. This is 2022. What if the stuff they're doing now is light years beyond what we already knew about? What if the black-eyed children are the new generation of the CIA experiments? What if they have been genetically manipulated with the genetics of different animals to give them different abilities? And I know you might think that sounds crazy, but we have documentation that's been declassified that prove that the CIA were absolutely doing those experiments. So we know that they were doing that decades ago. How far do you think that science has progressed in decades? Could they have perfected it? And if they did perfect it, is that what the black-eyed children are? Does that explain it? That they are experiments that have been purposely released into the population to see what they can do. To me, that makes a lot of sense. And that makes sense why the men in black would show up and pick them up in cars and take them away. We have multiple different witness accounts that state that. I covered them. I covered them on Staring. I covered them in episodes of Paranormal News. They're all on the YouTube channel. You can go there, youtube.com/James Hershey Jr., and watch them for yourself. And you can read the statements from these families that tell what happened, and that the men in black showed up, picked up the black-eyed children, and drove away with them. And in that statement, it didn't say that the men in black showed up and had to shoot them or had to subdue them with tranquilizers or anything like that. So that means that the black-eyed children weren't running from them. They weren't like, oh my God, who are you? Leave me alone. I'm getting out of here. They knew who they were. They willingly went right with them when they pulled up and opened the door and said, come on. They just went with them, which means they know them. They know who they are. They are familiar with these people. They know that they were coming to get them. They are the ride, if that makes sense. So what is actually going on here? That's the question. I think that the existence of the Men in Black is not only a real thing. I think that they absolutely do exist. But also I think that it points to the actual solution to a lot of these mysteries. That a lot of these things that we believe to be supernatural in some way are actually created in a lab by our own government in experimentation with genetic manipulation that we know that they've been doing. I think that explains it. And I think that also explains why the Men in Black show up after these things happen. Now, I haven't read reports of the Men in Black showing up at Loch Ness with Nessie sightings, or Lake Champlain with sightings of Champ. I haven't read reports of the Men in Black showing up after a Bigfoot sighting. So that would make me think that these things are not created in a lab. These things aren't government experiments. These are biological creatures. And we've covered that before. Bigfoot, Gigantopithecus, Champ and Nessie, most likely a plesiosaur or some other sort of aquatic dinosaur that has survived throughout the years. I think that explains that. You know, I think you have biological cryptids, and then you have cryptids that fall under the category of experiments gone wrong or experiments gone right that have either escaped or have been released purposely into the population to gauge their abilities. That's my thinking on it, and I think that stands up to the evidence. I think that makes sense. Is it 100% true? I don't know. But it fits. And I think when you're dealing with the paranormal, especially a lot of these unanswered questions and things that are classified that you don't know, a lot of times the best you can hope for is something that fits. And usually when something fits like that, there's truth to it. Now, whether it's 100% true or not, usually it isn't. Most things aren't usually 100% true when you're trying to figure them out like this. But if you find something that fits this well, there is truth to it. There's some percentage of this that is going to be true in what I'm saying, simply because it fits so well. But that's my thinking on it. So I'm going to throw over to Old Boy and get his opinion on what he thinks about the Men in Black and all the stuff I've talked about tonight. And we will go from there. So, Old Boy, go ahead, brother.
Thank you, brother. So, here's what I'm going to say. Now, we've talked about the Men in Black, and I've heard stories about Roswell, and they went there and investigated things, the Men in Black, and they would intimidate people, but they were very weird-looking hybrids. I don't think they're some people think they're hybrids of an alien and a human being. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I've heard that theory. Now, my personal opinion is, like James was talking about, you guys watch that show Stranger Things on Netflix. That's supposed to be true. That and I don't want to bring it other than the fact I'll say what it's about was the Marduk monster. I'm probably saying it wrong. The MK Ultra, but that's as far as I'm going to go. But that's what supposedly Stranger Things is about. And if you think about it, the reason I'm talking about this is that's what it is. If you look at the Mothman, my personal opinion is I think it's something from another dimension, and they know it, and that's why they keep chasing after this thing. I think a lot of these movies are based off facts. Because have you ever seen Glass? It's not Sixth Sense. It was the one with Bruce Willis where he's a superhero. I have all the movies. The other guy has multiple personalities, ends up being a mutant villain, and then Glass is a villain, but he set it all up so people would see at the end that it was true. The comic books were real, and people were just talking. They had a group of people who hid this and didn't think people should have powers like this because it wasn't fair. The government got involved. It was somebody like that. You know what I'm talking about. I can't think of the name. Unbreakable, and that was the movie. And then they made 2 other movies. You know that, guys, the Glass movie and stuff like that. And they were really good, but it was supposed to be true. And I think a lot of stories you see sometimes are true. Stranger Things is another dimension. Maybe this is all dimensional. Like somebody has a thing that they were talking about this, the Men in the Black. Maybe these things are from another dimension, and that's why they look so weird. They distorted and stuff like that. Maybe they look like that because they're from not space like everybody thinks, but they're from another dimension. Why does everybody think alien means space? It just means alien of this world. There are so many theories that's going around that we're just living day by day, and then we die, and then we go to another dream that's supposed to be a dream, but really it's reality that we're living. What are dreams really? We don't know. They're still baffled from that. If you think about it, the ocean, 90% of it has not, we don't know anything. 90, 89, something like that percent is unknown. We don't know what's going on there. We only know what's going on top and some of the bottom. But it's just something we don't know. So we don't know these things are just from another dimension. Like Mothman, they're chasing it. It destroyed everything. And then they're going after it, or they don't want people to know about it. They want to hide it like they do with everything. Loch Ness, I think, is biological. Bigfoot, I know. I don't know what the Yeti. There's. I think the Bigfoot's biological, but I don't know. The Yeti's something different. I think that's a magical creature. People are gonna say magical creature. They are like unicorns. I think unicorns existed, but not the way you think. It wasn't a. There's some people said it was a horse, but I also think there was different breeds of unicorn. If you ever see some of these old monsters and gods and stuff from Egyptian and monsters they had, if you look at them, they're hybrided from like different snakes and humans and all that. And griffins were half lions and hawks and all kinds of stuff. How do we know that wasn't really made? That when they were doing genetic stuff here from another dimension or from outer space. We don't know. And the Men in Black are just these people who are trying to keep everything down on the low with the government. Or they work with the government like James was talking about. We don't know. But the Stranger Thing, that's weird because if you look at it, it's like another dimension with all these weird creatures and all this weird stuff going on. It was an 80s show. I've only watched, honestly, a lot of people are big fans of it. I've only watched the first couple. I think it's on season 3. I stopped. I didn't watch the new season. But that's a very crazy idea because people kind of believe this, that there's other dimensions. The multiverse, like you see, like, God, I don't even want to, the Doctor Strange. There's different verses. Is that true? There's millions of different people. Like me and James are different in another world. I could be him. He could be me. You don't know. We could be female. You don't know what's going on. It's just a different alternate universe. And the Men in Black know this. And what's going on is like people like the Mothman, creatures like the Mothman and time travelers, they go after them like there's laws. You can't do that. So maybe these are not even really time travelers. You're just somebody from another dimension. When you talk about time traveling, maybe we're just cutting through dimensions and or multiverses and stuff like that. And this is where it's getting crazy because these things could be patrolling that. We don't know the truth with anything. So how do we not know? And this is a theory I have, and I'm just thinking about it right now as we're talking. The brilliance of Old Boy. What if these things are patrolling the dimension and these creatures like the Mothman, the Black-Eyed Children are from another dimension? Or like they were made. We made them, and we don't know how to control them. They got away. Or we do know what they're doing, and we're controlling them, like with remote viewing and people like Professor X. And that where they can control people and talk through, like, using paranormal thing, like using ghosts and stuff to go after you, or they could just do it themselves and they can manifest themselves anywhere. What if they showed that there's people who can use their mind to bend stuff? So how do we know that this isn't really all true? That some of the movies we watch are all just based off of true stories. Like the X-Men, there really is mutants. Maybe we don't know that, but there is. Maybe there really is people that have superpowers. Maybe there really is deities. Maybe everything we're taught is different and that we're just being fooled to believe in something so we don't know the truth, so we don't uprise against that. Whatever it is, it's something it's going to change everything once the truth comes out. The Men in Black, like the movies and stuff like that, you see them, they're always going after aliens. How do we know that's not a truth? Why do you think people make movies? Do you think that guy just made that up? Yeah, he got the actors and stuff, but there's some truth to that. Everything has some truth to it. Remember that. Maybe that we're just sitting here and we're just not being told the truth, and now stuff is just getting to the point where you got cell phones and video cameras everywhere. Now people are starting to see what was really there. Just now people are seeing the truth, and they don't want you to know the truth, because if you knew the truth, you're not going to care anymore. Why would you care? Why would you care if you find out these things are real? It's going to scare the hell out of people. Or some people are going to like, screw it, I ain't going to be able to do anything about it, so I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to rob, just saying that's what's going to happen. You're going to have anarchy and chaos everywhere. People will lose it like you've never seen it before. So that's why there's this blanket of rules and stuff they do, so that we all follow it and don't know the truth, but stuff slips out, like the Men in Black and all these creatures, the chupacabra, I can't say the word, but you know what I'm saying. The goat sucker from, that's what it really means. Mothman, all these creatures. I don't think the Jersey Devil is biological. I think that's supernatural. I think there's supernatural creatures. I think there's biological creatures, and I think there's dimensional creatures. I think there's outer space creatures. I also think there's interdimension. So even though crazy as that is, I believe shadow people are outlines of something else from another dimension. And they're just negative energy just formed. And they take whatever they see a human and they mimic. And it's just another level of something we don't know and probably shouldn't know about, because they're probably something we can't deal with and wouldn't want to deal with. A lot of them just like to watch. Some of them like to torture you. Some of them like to do whatever they want. We don't know what any of this stuff is. We're just, again, made up names for them. Bigfoot, Greys, reptilians. We make up these names. And what they could be is something even worse than we ever imagined. You know, Lovecraft, if you ever read Lovecraft stuff, and I think he's a lot of Sumerian stuff and a lot of stuff, I believe he had, they said some of the stuff he was writing was true. People think he just made up things. He didn't. He got some ideas, and I believe that he found something that we don't even know about, or he heard of somebody who had a text of a book that we don't even know existed, and it does. And I think he talked about some of these stories with these creatures and just some weird things that Lovecraft talked about was the idiot god. What it is I'm reading about it. It's this thing in space that's asleep. But why they call it idiot god is he's created everything, but he doesn't realize it. We're all living in his dimension, you would think, of his ideas, and he's asleep, and when he wakes up everything's going to end. But that's why they said he's an idiot, because he doesn't know any different. He doesn't know what he's dreaming. So we're all living in this universe that he made up, and that's what I'm not saying I believe it. I'm just saying that was one of the creatures in it, and there's some people said there could be truth to that. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying that that's crazy. And maybe some of these creatures even worse than we ever can imagine. Anything's worse than maybe some of these Sumerian. If you ever read some of these Sumerian, the ancient ones, they talk. These were crazy ass gods, man, like elder god, whatever you want to call them. But that's what we would think. If you think something like a Titan, they're going to think it's a god. Little us, that's a god. When really they're not. They're just giant monsters or giant creatures that like the Nephilim, and you're going to be scared because you're going to think they're like a god because there's nothing you could do about a 500-foot giant running around. You know, I'm showing you examples. I'm just showing you what I'm meaning by that. And there's nothing you're going to do about it, especially then when we didn't have any weapons and stuff like we have now. Now we're a little bit more dangerous, but I still think we can't touch some of these other people from wherever they're from. And I say, or species, or extraterrestrial, or interdimensional not demons, interdimensional beings. We don't know what they are. And we're playing with fire, in my opinion. That's all I'm going to say. So, other than that, I believe the Men in Black are real. I don't know if they're alien. I think they could be a couple things, like James suggested. Something we made, or it could be another dimension, or it could be hybrided alien. You never know, bro. That's all I'm going to say. There you go, James. That's my opinion.
Well, we know that mutants absolutely exist. 100% they exist. There was a fascinating show that was done actually by Stan Lee, the comic book guy. I think it was on Science Channel or Discovery Channel or one of those channels, that was called Stan Lee's Superhumans, and it was a non-fiction, like, documentary type show, and they would do like 2 or 3 an episode, actual people that had abilities that were way beyond what a normal human can do. I remember one of the guys never got cold, so he would be out in like a Speedo in the middle of the ice and snow in a very, very cold environment, swimming in water that was just insanely cold and all this, and it wouldn't give him any issue. There was another guy on there that could run forever. His muscles, for whatever reason, never developed any lactic acid in them, so he never got tired, because that's what makes us get tired, is it makes our muscles so they don't go anymore, is a buildup of lactic acid, and that causes you not to be able to continue. And his muscles didn't do that, so he could literally run 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 miles at a time and have no issue, never get the slightest bit tired. It was amazing. And on this show, they showed over and over and over again all these different people that could do things that normal people just couldn't do. So 100% mutants actually exist. I 100% believe that. It's documented. You can look at it yourself. Now, whether that is just a matter of random mutations in the genetic code, or what it is that causes that, we know that that's a naturally occurring phenomenon that happens in human beings. And I believe that there's also mutants that are created, like I was talking about earlier. I 100% believe that as well, because we have the documentation that they were trying to do it. That is proven. So we know that they were attempting it, and that was decades and decades and decades ago. So we know that if that's the case, most likely they will have succeeded by now. Another thing I want to talk about with Old Boy is he talked about like them not having the technology back then like we have now to fight these things as well. I don't know if that's true or not, because I think that people think that this society that we have now, this civilization that we have now, is the most technologically advanced that human beings have ever been, and I don't believe that. I think that there have been multiple rises and falls of human civilization in the past. I think that humanity has reached a point where our technology gets to a much higher level than we are now. And then there's some kind of catastrophe that happens that wipes a lot of us out, and it kind of sends us back to the Stone Age almost, to where we don't have anything that works anymore, and we have to kind of start over again. with very little people, and it just builds up again. And then eventually we get to the point to where our civilization and our technology is real high again, and then we screw it up again. I think that's happened over and over and over again. If you look at the story in the Bible of the Tower of Babel, that is a great illustration of this. Mankind's technology had reached a point where they began constructing this tower to try to reach God. Now, when you think about that in the story, you're thinking, you know, they're building like a tall building that they're trying to, you know, stack stuff on top of each other to get up high enough to see God. But if you really break that down and think about it, we're not talking about simply a 4 or 5 story building here. Okay, because if you look back in ancient structures, you can see the pyramids, you can see places that were built pretty damn big. So it's not like they didn't have the ability to build large structures, okay? When they're talking about something that could reach God, they're talking about something much higher than a skyscraper, something that would reach up into the clouds, that tall. Something like that requires superior technology to construct. Remember in the Bible they talk about that God scattered the people and scattered their languages so they couldn't understand each other anymore. That to me says that there was some sort of catastrophe that happened, probably some sort of natural disaster if they're blaming God for it, if they're saying God did it. It had to be some sort of natural disaster that happened that wiped out a lot of humanity. And the remaining survivors were kind of scattered all over the place, and they kind of had to start over again. That makes sense. If you look at things like Stonehenge, things like the pyramids, with one, how they're constructed, two, the way they line up with different constellations in space, that we would think that the people of that time would have absolutely no way of knowing and predicting where a certain constellation or a certain star was going to be on a certain day of the year, so where it would shine perfectly through to hit this exact spot they needed it to hit. Stuff like that exists. That requires superior technology, and it requires very sophisticated mathematical and scientific ability in order to figure those things out. That is not something that simple farmers are going to pull off. Okay, that's something that you're going to need a lot of knowledge to do. Look at things like the Nazca lines, where they were around for a long, long time and nobody even knew they existed until somebody saw them from way, way up high. Like if you go up in a hot air balloon, or you go up in a plane or something like that and you look down, you can see these amazing shapes of different figures and stuff laid out. But from the ground, you don't even know they're there. That requires advanced technology to pull off. Because even if you say, well, maybe they just made some sort of hot air balloon type device, that's not super complicated. Maybe they did that, and that's how they got up high enough to be able to see what they were looking at. Okay, but how did they communicate to the ground where to move the damn rocks and where to move stuff to make it look right? They had to be able to communicate. I'm sure they didn't go up and look at it, come back down, and then say, okay, guys, this is what it looks like from up there, so let's move this rock to here, here, and here, and let me go up and check it again. I'm sure that's not how it worked. They had to have some way to communicate back and forth in order to do that properly. There's all kinds of things like that that just don't make any sense for a primitive people to be able to accomplish without advanced technology. That tells me that most likely there was a technology that was way more advanced than we give it credit for, and probably more advanced than we have now, and in different ways than we have now. There's no saying that their technology had to be the same as our technology. Maybe they didn't use computers and stuff at all. Maybe theirs were based on crystals, like in Atlantis. In the theory of Atlantis and the lore of Atlantis, they talk about all kinds of advanced technology that relies on crystals and stuff like that to make it work as energy sources. Tesla, he was trying to build towers at different points of the earth because those were high energy points where he believed that he could pull energy through the earth and use the magnetic resonance of the earth in order to have energy floating everywhere. Basically Wi-Fi. that, like we have now with the internet, but with energy, so that you'd be able to power your house, power your car, power everything you own for free, right out of the air. That was Tesla's vision. Do you think it's a coincidence that there are pyramids set in different power points all across the globe? How is it that people in Egypt, the Aztecs down in Mexico and South America, people in Antarctica, people in China, people in the Middle East, how did all of these people have the idea to build pyramids exactly the same? If they've never communicated with each other, if they were just primitive people, why would they do that? That doesn't make any sense at all. Now, the theory is that the pyramids were either places to sacrifice to the gods or places for pharaohs to be buried, those kind of things. Why would they all be the exact same shape? Why would they all contain the same kind of structures inside and everything? It makes no sense unless there's a bigger purpose for that. Could that tie in with Tesla's idea of different towers that could harness the energy of the earth? Is that what the pyramids were actually for? Were they harnessing the power of the earth in order to create free energy for their society, to fuel the technology of their time, that gave them abilities to do all this cool stuff that they did back then that we can't figure out how they did now? Is it because they had that energy source and they figured out how to harness the energy of the earth to get energy floating through the air like Wi-Fi that they could easily use to power any devices, any kind of technology that they had? Tesla thought so, and to me that makes a lot of sense. Once again, can't know for sure, but it fits. And when something fits, you know you're onto something there. Because if it fits perfectly like that, it can't be coincidence. That's my idea on it. So I think that they had a lot more sophisticated technology than we give them credit for. And I think we've done this little game of building up and falling down over and over and over and over again throughout our history. I think a lot of our old legends and the old tales of monsters and stuff like that from lore are different things that were developed during different periods of human history. So the technology gets built up, we start experimenting with things, we start doing weird stuff, and this creature gets made. And then everything falls apart. And then we build back up. And all we have left is the stories that we tell our children of what life was like when we were growing up and when we were around. And down through the generations, they become just that, stories. Fantastic stories of minotaurs and of half-man, half-horse centaurs and satyrs, which are like half-goat, half-man, all these things. How do we know that in some previous civilization that we had, that we weren't doing genetic manipulation just like we are now? If we figured it out now, what's to say we couldn't have figured it out then, when we had technology then as well? Remember, a lot of the knowledge from ancient times was lost. The Library in Alexandria was burnt. Several different libraries during different wars in our past have been burnt. And we've lost all that knowledge. We just have no idea some of the stuff that used to happen. We don't know. But we do stumble across relics. We stumble across ruins of these monoliths, these things like the pyramids and like Stonehenge and things like that, the Nazca lines that defy explanation. We don't understand. Why the hell did they build this gigantic thing? And what was the purpose of it? We don't even know how they did it. I mean, if you look at the pyramids, the way those blocks are cut with such precision, lasers can't do that. A laser in a computer can't cut it as perfectly as it was cut. But you want me to believe that some guy in a diaper with a hammer and a chisel did it in the middle of the desert? I don't buy it. There's no chisel marks at all. How did they do that? How were they able to take stone that was quarried hundreds of miles away that weighed 50 to 100 tons apiece. How the hell did they get those all the way to where the pyramids were built, from hundreds of miles away where they were quarried? If they didn't have any technology, how did they do that? Are you telling me they took logs and put underneath and rolled them for hundreds of miles? Hundreds of miles. They kept taking whole trees out, running to the front and putting the whole tree underneath. Do you have any idea what a whole tree weighs? You're going to tell me they did that for hundreds of miles? I don't buy it. Even if they just did it for a small amount of space just to kind of get it onto a barge and run it down the river, they still had to take it from the river up to the building site. And then when they get it on the building site, they've got to get it up onto the pyramid. Without the use of cranes, without the use of any of the things that we have now, how would that be possible? It wouldn't be. The only way they could have done it is if they would have had technology that would have allowed them to do that. That's the only answer. Or they had some sort of physical capabilities that we don't have now. Maybe they had giants in those times that picked the damn things up and set them up there. But I'd be more inclined to believe that they had some kind of technological answer than I would to believe that there's a couple 100-foot giant that's picking up big old stones and setting them on top of the pyramid. Because if you got a couple 100-foot tall giant, how the hell are you going to make him put stones up on the pyramid in the first place? He ain't going to listen to you. He's going to do whatever the hell he wants. So anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. It was definitely an interesting one. We kind of went all over the place on this one, but it was a fun discussion. Let me know down in the comment section when this hits YouTube what you guys think about any of the stuff that we talked about tonight. It'll be interesting to hear. That being said, I'm going to throw back over to Old Boy so that he can do the final shout-outs and all that kind of jazz.
Thank you, Butter. I hope you guys enjoyed the show on Parax Radio every Sunday nights at 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern. And the best of on Tuesdays, I think it's at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. That's the best of show. If you want to listen to our newer or older shows or the Paranormal News, James Hershey Jr.'s YouTube page, and people, why do you guys do that? Why don't you have, well, we just do it for that reason. Easier. I know it doesn't say staring, but that's where you can get everything at. We have a method to our madness. You guys want merchandise? I'll tell you where to go. Shirts, all that cool stuff. COVID mask, but I mean, COVID's kind of dying out now. Hopefully. I mean, it's still there, but, you know, the mask isn't being required as much as they used to. So I hope you guys have a wonderful night. I hope you like the show. Comment if you want to let us know what you think in the comment section. A lot of things are going on. Great. So check us out whenever you can. We're always on some show or doing something with tells or staring. So check us out, guys. I love you. Misfits, Sugar Ladies, Monster Lovers, Demon Hunters. I love you and have a great night. Busby.
Yeah, there have been several things that we've been working on in the recent past. I filmed 2 separate TV shows in the last couple weeks, and Old Boy was on one as well. We did, both of us did a show called A Theory of Conspiracy. That's Marcus Koch, a good friend of ours. He's been on Staring before. He's a horror movie director and special effects wizard. They call him the Guru of Gore. We've had him on. He started a show called A Theory of Conspiracy that he does. And I did that show, and then I think a week later, maybe 2 weeks later, Old Boy did the show as well. So both of those will be coming out, and when they do, we'll let you know where you can see them and the times and the dates and all that kind of jazz. And earlier today, I filmed an episode of the Disembodied Voices TV show for the Paraflix Network. That is a paranormal talk show, essentially. And it was a really good time, actually. I went on and did like an hour interview, something like an hour 15. And it was a lot of fun. I had a really good conversation. It was a good interview. The host of the show is Dr. Kelly Schultz. She actually does a show here on ParaX, and she has that TV show now on Paraflix. So I did that episode today that I filmed it. It should be coming out, I believe, in July or August. She told me. So once I have a firm air date, I will pass that along to you guys. And check my social media. I'll be putting up the links and the dates and all that kind of stuff when I get them. But we have been very busy. We've been doing a lot, and there's a lot more on the horizon. We're in talks with several different places, let's just put it that way, to do other shows. So there will be a lot coming. So just want to let you guys know that once I have the actual air dates of all the episodes we've done and everything, I will definitely share them so that you guys can check them out. But I hope that you enjoyed the show. I appreciate you watching, and as always, it's up to you to make up your own mind about all this stuff. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm just here to give you the information, and then you choose what you think about it. And when you figure out what you think about it, let me know down in the comment section so I can read it too, and I can know what you're thinking. And maybe you might change my thinking on something. Probably not, but it's possible. It's happened before. So anyway, with that being said, we love you guys, and we will catch you on the next one. Until we speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.